On this show, for months, I started off as the lone voice that was talking about borders. I was the person who actually got in a car and drove to the border to show you the problems that existed the first time around. The border problems are way worse the second time around. Now, I want to say something directly to Queenslanders. I understand that when you hear news that emanates from Sydney or Melbourne or Canberra, there's a part of you where the old FU gene kicks in. They can't tell us how to run our state. But I want you to think about this from the perspective that actually matters, yours. Annastacia Palaszczuk has got a system in place now where your kids would not be able to attend your funeral, where your kids wouldn't be allowed to come and see you in hospital while you were dying. Now, I understand that under the cover of COVID, there have been some very wild and weird times. But our basic humanity as Australians, your basic humanity as a Queenslander, is being preyed upon by a Premier who is only obsessed with an election. This is not about health. It's not about safety. It's about a hard line. It's about a hard line that she thinks you want. And while I absolutely believe in borders that restrict people coming from known hotspots, I do not support a lack of humanity that says your kids can't attend your funeral. Think about your parents, that their grandkids will not be allowed to attend their funeral. When you hold a baby for the first time, if you've ever had that privilege, you know what runs through your head. Imagining getting to see them to go to school for the first time. Maybe seeing them go to university or get a trade. Maybe buying their first home. You have an expectation that you might be able to attend their wedding. You expect to be with them for many a Christmas, many a Father's Day, many a Mother's Day. And you expect that when you get crook, that they will hold your hand. Annastacia Palaszczuk, for politics, has got between you and your family. She has got between you and your family in your dying days. She has got between you and your family even after you are gone. The theatrics I will ignore of the Premier, pretending that she was the victim today. She thought she was the victim today. The victim today, and there were many of them, start with the 26-year-old Sarah. Sarah is a Queenslander. Sarah is a Queenslander who was not allowed to go to her father's funeral. She lives in Canberra, a place where coronavirus has not existed for 60 days. And I want you to look at that image. And I want you to think of your daughter, your sister, your grandchild, that is what they would be forced to wear when they were not able to attend your funeral, to hug your widow, her sister. Instead, she had to wear that today under police escort when she was taken to the funeral home and given moments with the body. Annastacia Palaszczuk is dangerous. Sarah spoke this morning and did her best. She did everything she could. These are normal people. She manages a Hungry Jack's, for God's sake. Yet because of the inflexibility of the system that has been put in place, of the illogical and paranoid rule of the Chief Health Officer, who tried to tell us today that because there had been coronavirus in Bateman's Bay and some people travel from Canberra to Bateman's Bay, even though the ACT has had no coronavirus for 60 days, it's still a hotspot. So Sarah was forced by Annastacia Palaszczuk, by Dr. Jeanette Young, to go public. And think about how you would feel if it was your daughter who had to do this on the day of your funeral.
I asked for an exemption, like, just for a couple of hours to go to the funeral. I wasn't asking them to leave, like, quarantine after that altogether. Like, I know I have to come back and finish my quarantine, but I'm not sure how they're interpreting that form that, the form that I gave them.
And so when did you've asked for that, and what have you heard? You tell me what you've heard.
They said I shouldn't even be in Queensland because the exemption for me to come to Queensland was to say goodbye to my dying father, not to go to the funeral.
The Prime Minister shared our rage today. He worked really hard.
They've got to find a better way, those who have decided these measures are necessary, that they've got to find a better way to deal with the heart here. I mean, I've dealt with many premiers on many different issues all the time. I've dealt with the Queensland Premier on other issues. Sadly, today I didn't have the influence that I would hope to have. But Sarah doesn't get today back.
No, she doesn't.
She never gets it back. And that just fills my heart with sadness.
Annastacia Palaszczuk today received phone calls not just from the Prime Minister. She also got one from a Labor leader, a person who is at the exact opposite end of the political spectrum to Scott Morrison. The Chief Minister of the ACT, Andrew Barr, called her as well today. Yet no mention of the phone call from the ACT Chief Minister, arguing on the behalf of somebody who is a Queenslander. Instead, Annastacia Palaszczuk thinks she is the victim today.
I will not be bullied, nor will I be intimidated.
Order.
By the Prime Minister of this country, who contacted me this morning and who I made very clear to the
Member
fact
Everton will put his comments through the
that it was not
chair.
my decision, that I would pass the information on to the Chief Health Officer, and it is the Chief Health Officer's decision to make. Mr Speaker.
Member for
Mr.
Nicklin is
Speaker,
warned under standing orders.
The Prime Minister at the time said to me that he had not gone public, but, Mr Speaker, I knew that he would go public, Mr Speaker.
Premier, you are not the victim. This lady is the victim. How dare you put yourself ahead of her? How dare you put yourself in front of a woman wanting to mourn her father and hug her 11-year-old sister? This is not about politics, it is about humanity, and yours is lacking. Now, you might think you've got the silver bullet to save your ass at an election, but you got between the citizens of your state and their family. What you have done is unforgivable. Yet you parade as the victim. The other villain in this is the woman who you, Premier, have empowered to become the true leader of Queensland. A bureaucrat. A bureaucrat who would think that the best way to solve the road toll is to stop everyone being able to drive in their car. But it is not her job to get between the people of Queensland and their kids when they are dying or they have died. Listen to this bullshit.
But they need to go into quarantine if they come from one of the hot spots. Canberra is defined as a hot spot because it's within the middle of New South Wales.
You disgust me. You truly do. That press conference happened only after the Premier's office told her flunkies to make her go and do a press conference with just 30 minutes' notice. And while Sarah's life will forever be scarred by your heartlessness, her sister didn't get a hug from her older sister when her father was being put to rest.